the finest apartment building in London. 15 stories, a deluxe restaurant and a roof garden.
It was Torrance house, wasn't it? Blitzed in the war.
I'll say it was. Whew. It was a shambles before we got to work on it. Blimey. It must be all of 500 years old.
Yeah, look what's in it.
Look, I need your help, Mr. Chan. And I'm not a man to come begging nor to look on the black side. But here I am, about to build Packer Towers, the biggest and best block of apartments in Mayfair. But will I be able to rent them?
If, as you say, Mr. Packard, they are the biggest and finest, I see no difficulty in renting same, providing, of course, rents suit pocketbooks of tenants.
Oh, people can still pay all right, even if the rents are high.
But you are worried about skeleton in armor, hmm?
Mr. Chan, the block isn't even built yet, but it's got to ghost already.
Tell me, where can this relic now be found?
Oh, the police took it away.
Oh, in that case, shall investigate. Barry, call Inspector Duff Scotland Yard, please.
Sure thing, Pop.
Do we have to bring them into it? I'm only asking for your help.
Always most necessary to learn facts before fiction. Sometimes fly might be an ointment.
Inspector Duff, please, for Charlie Chan.
When one's dealing with something that's 500 years old...
Could be more, could be less. Armor has been worn since ancient days of Greeks.
Inspector Duff, hold it, please. Here's Pop.
Yes, hello, Inspector.
Hello, Charlie. You psychic or something? I was just calling you.
Oh, for what reason?
Well, a very interesting case just came in. Sort of crazy thing you like. It's a matter of a man in medieval armor shot through the chest.
Most unusual. Was always of opinion ancient knights of old died on point of enemy's lance.
Not this one, Charlie. Come round and take a look.
Shall come immediately. Thank you, Inspector. I think, Mr. Packard, you have acquired services of humble self. Am retired detective, but old Oriental brain, always interested in unusual. Come, Pack. Yes, Inspector, you are quite right. Most unusual for ancient knight to be shot by a bullet.
But people still wore armor after the gun was invented, Pop.
Oh, you can forget that line of thinking, Barry. This hole was made by a reasonably modern bullet, around the size of a .45 caliber. And we thought we had a first-rate 500-year-old mystery on our hands.
But what makes you now think you have not?
Well, to begin with, the Torrance mansion was only 150 years old when it was bombed out.
But the armor is older than the mansion.
Sure it is, but not older than the skeleton that was in it. You see, on the night of the air raid, there was a fancy-dress masquerade party going on in the mansion, and Torrance was wearing a suit of armor. Now, he was last seen in the library.
But what makes you so sure it was Torrance? Other guests perhaps also wore suit of armor.
No, Charlie, we had the Torrance family dentist check the teeth in the skull against the records in his files. He was in no doubt as to whose skull it was.
Oh, well, in that case, perhaps you do have first-class mystery. A 17-year-old murder.
That's what it looks like. It's just a headache to us.
Tell me, Inspector, you are quite sure death was caused by a bullet?
Oh, no question of it. It pierced the armor, went right through him, and smashed his spine.
Most interesting. Murder, but scene of crime so conveniently demolished by German bomb. Now, tell me, Inspector, what about the other guests at the party?
Many of them were killed. Most of them were in the ballroom. Oh, Mrs. Anthony Torrance is still alive, though. She lives in Brook Street with her only son, Gerald, and his wife, Virginia. Well, both Gerald and Virginia were in the house at the time it was hit. But, of course, at that time, they were only 10 and 9-year-old, respectively.
Well, tell me, were these children hurt?
Fortunately, no. Well, as I say, they're married now and very happy, I imagine.
And I hope sad memories of 17 years ago now safely buried.
But suddenly dug up again in a most dramatic way.
Yes. I presume you are having an inquest, hmm?
Yes, of course, although what it will achieve is anybody's guess. What do you think, Charlie?
Well, Inspector, I have never been in favor of jumping rapidly to conclusions. Tell me, you have further information about late Anthony Torrance?
Well, there's not much to pin anything onto. Seems he had a business partner, Christopher Morgan. He still runs the firm. It's called Torrance and Morgan. It's an investment concern.
I see. Barry, please make note of those names.
You know, Charlie, the Nazis had 500 planes over London that night. The alert lasted 5 hours.
Well, it is most interesting and also very sad. But now, Inspector, tell me, do you have a list of guests at that party?
Yes, it's been prepared. I'll send you one, but frankly, I don't think that either Scotland Yard or Charlie Chan has much chance with a 17-year-old murder, where the scene of the crime has been blasted into oblivion and all the witnesses are dead.
Inspector, old Oriental detective, loves challenge of the impossible.
Mr. Chan, I'll be entirely frank with you. I don't like this investigation one little bit. I mean, what good will it do?
It seems a crime has been committed, Mr. Torrance. The murder of your own father.
All right. And we believed he'd been killed in the bombing. How will it help to dig up the past?
In crime, there is no age. I understand you were also in Torrance Mansion night of the bombing.
Yes, my mother, too. There was a large fancy dress party on. As a matter of fact, my wife, Virginia, was there as well, as a guest with her parents. We were kids then, of course.
What about your father's partner, Mr. Christopher Morgan?
Yes, he was at the party.
I presume you and Mr. Morgan are still business associates?
Well, no, as a matter of fact, we're not. Father established ample funds for Mother and myself, but his agreement with Morgan left the business solely to the surviving partner.
I see. Now, please forgive indelicate question, but do you think that this agreement would be sufficient motive for Mr. Morgan to commit murder?
I wouldn't dream of suggesting such a thing, and you have no right to either.
In crime, detective not only has right, but it is his duty to investigate every possibility.
Oh, Mother, this is Mr. Charlie Chan.
Gerald told me you were coming, and why. How do you do?
I am so happy to meet you, Mrs. Torrance. But I fear revelation of true cause of your husband's death must have been great shock.
Well, naturally, losing Anthony was bad enough, but losing him in this way, and to learn about it after all these years.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chan, but is there anything further to discuss?
No, except one more question. Where were you during party, Mr. Torrance?
Where would a 10-year-old boy be, Mr. Chan?
Oh, of course, naturally, in bed. Forgive me.
I'll show you out, Mr. Chan.
No, thanks. Think much more important for son to comfort distressed mother. Thank you again. Goodbye, Mrs. Torrance.
Gerald.
Don't worry, Mother. Don't worry about anything.
Mr. Chan,
Oh, at your service.
I'm Virginia Torrance.
Yes, I have just met your husband.
What did he say? Did he tell you?
Tell me what?
Virginia, dear, you've met Mr. Chan.
Yes, just this moment.
Mother wants to see you in the library.
Excuse me, Mr. Chan.
Goodbye, Mr. Chan.
Goodbye. Congratulations, my son. Most interesting model.
Thanks, Pop. I copied it from a set of plans of the Torrance mansion found at the Office of Works.
Oh.
See? We can reconstruct the crime. Mr. Anthony Torrance, in the suit of armor, was here in the library.
Yes, and most of the other people were in ballroom. Now, interesting question. Why was Mr. Torrance in library?
Cooling off after dancing?
No, very doubtful. You remember he was wearing suit of armor. Ancient Chinese saying, man in iron suit, no good for dancing. Cannot get feet off ground.
Yeah, you're right.
Now, I'm wondering, where was business partner Mr. Christopher Morgan?
You think he did it?
No, not thinking anything yet. 200 guests at party, more than half of them killed. Now, murderer could also be dead.
Mr. Chan,
Please sit down, Mrs. Torrance.
you must stop this investigation. It can't do any good. It can only do harm.
Would be most grateful for explanation.
I can't explain. But my father-in-law is dead. It happened a long time ago. What can it matter now how he died?
When we met short time ago, you asked two important questions. What did he say? What did he tell you? I presume you refer to your husband. May I ask what you expected him to tell me?
Nothing. I didn't know what I was saying. Please do as I ask. Leave things as they are. For everyone's sake. Including yours.
Gosh, is she nervous? In and out like a... Say, she was trying to warn us, Pop.
I know, but I'm wondering about what.
The Torrance family doesn't want to know who killed their father.
Two of them do not wish to know. Virginia and her husband, Gerald. However, there is a third.
You mean the mother? What do we do?
I think return to scene of crime. Perhaps rubble which conceals skeleton in armor can also reveal skeleton in closet. Come. Another tragic example, my son, of the futility of war. Very sad to think 17 years ago, so many people in this house, all enjoying laughter, music, friendship, and life. More than 200 of them. Then in one moment, complete destruction, tragedy, death, and this pile of stones. Very distressing. Well, this was room where bomb hit, ballroom. Over here, billiard. And this is library where suit of armor with gruesome guest was discovered.
Mr. Chan,
Oh, Mrs. Torrance.
this was where they found him.
Yes, Mrs. Torrance.
Mr. Chan, is there nothing you can do to stop this inquiry? I'd gladly pay you.
Most unusual. You mean you do not wish murder of your husband to be found?
I ask you to stop it.
Regret this is impossible. I have assignment with Mr. Packer, build of apartment house. Also, many years as detective have reputation never to abandon case until all problems are solved.
Please, Mr. Chan.
I am so sorry.
Well, if that's your last word, I'm sorry too. Goodbye.
Goodbye, Mrs. Torrance.
Well, that makes the entire family, 1, 2, 3 of them. You'd think they would love the poor guy who died. But instead, they want the secret kept just as dead as he is.
Yes, very singular. As a rule, only murderer would like to have secret kept.
You okay, Pop?
Okay, my son, a little dusty. Something caused avalanche.
A car went off like a jet.
Oh, very interesting. Perhaps another warning. Or perhaps persons unknown wish to have me buried as deeply as skeleton and armor. Come, very unhealthy atmosphere.
Come in. Come in, Mr. Chan. Sit down. Would you care for a drink?
No, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Would prefer to come directly to the point.
Please. Let me come to the point. I am opposed to this entire investigation, Mr. Chan.
Strangely enough, many people are of the same attitude. Strange because, as a rule, the world looks unfavorably upon murder.
Tony Torrance is dead. How he died could make very little difference now.
Since talking to you on a telephone, Mr. Morgan, I've had an opportunity to think about the evening in question. Now, perhaps you would be kind enough to tell me what you remember.
I'm sorry. It's so long ago. I hardly remember a thing.
Certainly there must be some recollections. Not every day does man survive a bombing.
Well, I remember the bomb, all right. I heard it coming down. It seemed like an eternity. Then it struck, and I woke up in hospital with both legs broken.
I'm happy to observe disability was not of permanent nature. Now, before bomb struck.
Well, I imagine I had a drink or two, chatted with some of the guests.
I see. But, Mr. Morgan, imagination not much help in art of detection, particularly since passing years have obliterated all possible clues. Do you remember where you were when bomb actually fell?
Oh, yes, I remember that, too. I was playing billiards.
With whom, please?
Oh, I'm afraid at this distance of time I haven't the foggiest notion. I do regret I can't be more helpful, Mr. Chair.
I, too, regret very deeply, Mr. Morgan. But now to change line of inquiry. Did Mr. Torrance have any enemies? Anybody with reason to kill him?
Well, the answer to that could easily be yes. Investment's a tricky business. When one man becomes rich, well, another usually goes broke.
When Mr. Torrance died, you became rich, did you not, Mr. Morgan?
You mean because I got the whole business? If you're trying to pin a motive for Torrance's death on me, forget it. I was rich anyway.
I am so happy to hear that. Now, tell me, did you own a gun, 45 caliber perhaps? And did you have one on night of murder?
Mr. Chan, if I'd used a gun on my partner, Tony Torrance, I should certainly have remembered that. And I'm afraid that's all I can tell you.
Thank you. You have been most helpful, Mr. Morgan. In spite of your determination not to be. Good day. According to Mr. Morgan's own statement, however, not necessarily true, he was playing billiards here.
Anthony Torrance died in the library. That's the next room, Pop. Then Morgan is our man for sure.
I have often warned you, my son, never jump to hasty conclusions. Sometimes person falls flat on face. Let me see Inspector Duff's list of people killed that night. Very long, tragic list. Important people. Well,
What is it, Pop?
Police Inspector Robert H. Ferguson of Scotland Yard. I wonder what Police Inspector was doing at masquerade party.
Guarding valuables like ladies' furs and such?
Oh, no. Too undignified job for important police inspector. Also, very unlikely inspector was invited guest. Very strange case. 4 people. 3 close relatives, 1 close friend of murdered man, yet all eager to stop investigation. Why?
One of those people is the murderer. That's clear. But which one?
Virginia, she was only 9. Gerald, he was only 10.
How about the mother? She wants the inquiry called off. Suppose she shot the husband and her kids want to cover up for her.
Not very possible. Mother had most to lose by death of husband, including valuable interest in important business.
And Morgan is still our prime suspect, huh, Pop?
If Morgan shot Torrance, wonder why mother, son, and daughter are covering him up. I'm inclined to think one element is missing. But to prove my theory, I must have assistance of Inspector Duff.
You're absolutely right, Mr. Chan. This 50 caliber bullet has made a hole of precisely the same dimensions as the one which killed Mr. Torrance.
Then bullet just used in experiment is same type as those fired from machine guns and Stuka bombers during wartime air attacks?
Correct. So Torrance was killed by the bullet from a German dive bomber. And there wasn't any murder after all. At least not the kind we're investigating.
My apologies, Inspector, but again, I must disagree.
Good old Charlie. So you still think there's a murder, huh?
Well, Inspector, perhaps I could make it fit if I could find missing piece in jigsaw puzzle.
What piece is that?
Inspector Ferguson of Scotland Yard, who was on list you gave me of members of party who were guests that night. Mm-hmm. Would you know why Inspector Ferguson was present?
Sure, I can tell you that right now. He wasn't a guest at that party. He was on an investigation.
Oh? What investigation?
Well, Charlie, as you probably know, during the war, this country needed every pound, shilling, and penny it had. But Inspector Ferguson believed that Anthony Torrance and his partner, Christopher Morgan, were black marketing British currency across to America.
Well, and was this so, Inspector?
I don't think we'll ever know, Charlie. Ferguson's death put a stop to the inquiry there and then. He left no records worth working on.
I now must admit to a piece of evidence I have concealed. Morgan's butler told me Morgan did possess a 45 caliber gun. Very possible this same gun could have been used to silence prying Inspector Ferguson.
No dice, Charlie. Ferguson was killed by the bomb.
No, his body was blown to pieces by bomb. But very possible body could have been dead before bombing. Killed by a 45 caliber bullet.
Fired by whom?
Oh, hi, Mr. Packer.
Oh, lad. Is your dad in?
No, not right now. Come in.
Thank you very much.
Now, anything I can do for you?
Yes, stop this investigation.
What?
They're threatening me now.
Who is?
The Torrance family. Look, I've had this letter. It says, call off this investigation or Packer Towers never goes up.
But I thought you bought the site.
So did I. But it seems there's been some slip in the agreement and they've jumped to it. It's all my lawyer's fault. Hey, Torrance family can put me right out of business. Look, I've been paying your dad to clear up a mystery. Now I'll pay him double if he won't.
Pretty desperate, aren't you?
Well, who wouldn't be? So are the Torrances desperate. They'd do anything to try and stop your dad.
Anything? Gosh. And do you know where Pop is right now?
No.
With the Torrances. I gotta go.
Now that I have explained different positions of people at Torrance Mansion on night of bombing, I shall be very frank. I am almost certain what occurred on night of masquerade party 17 years ago. And I am here not to investigate murder of your father, but murder of Inspector Ferguson of Scotland Yard.
You're mad. The inspector was blown to pieces in the raid.
Correct. But after he had been shot and killed, you knew this, your husband knew this, and you, Mrs. Torrance, also knew this.
How could we know? There was a party going on. They were children upstairs in bed.
It is known that children often creep softly from their beds to watch grown-ups at parties from darkness of staircase. I believe these children saw something very frightening, a memory which has lived with them ever since. The tragic shooting of Inspector Ferguson by Mr. Torrance.
Great pity, Mr. Chan. I tried to warn you.
Yes, I remember when ruins almost collapsed on me. Was also warned by your young wife and mother. Of course, they knew danger to me from you.
I love my father, Mr. Chan, more than anything in the world. The newspapers aren't going to smear his name now. And neither are you.
Gerald! Stop!
I understand and deeply sympathize with your feelings, young man. However, would suggest one tragedy in a family is sufficient.
You all right, Pop?
All right, boys.
Inspector Duff.
Seem to have everything under control, Charlie?
All right, Mr. Chan. You found out our secret. Do you think we've ever been able to get it out of our minds? Gerald and I were on the stairs. We saw it. There in the library.
Yes, just before Mr. Torrance was machine gunned from Stuka airplane. Then bomb fell. Destroyed all evidence.
You know it all, Mr. Chan, don't you? All right, I threatened your life. I'm ready to take what's coming to me.
One moment, please. Inspector, would deeply appreciate if you could forget threat made against me by a young man.
Sorry, Charlie. Shall have to take him in charge at any rate. Regulations.
Oh, no. No, please.
Perhaps Inspector will permit young lady to accompany her husband?
Yes, of course. Come along, Mr. Torrance.
Please do not worry, Mrs. Torrance. Your son's actions trying to defend his father's name, most understandable. I'm sure he will soon be back with you. Also, terrible secret held by all of you for so many years now no longer exists.
If only we'd told the truth from the beginning.
Yes. Truth cures many things. It's very possible truth could also cure all ills of the world. However, now I must go to Scotland Yard in interest of your son. I shall not press charges.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chan. To think that Gerald might have killed you.
Oh, no. Charlie Chan, most indestructible Chinese, hardly ever gets killed.